Two comic book stores compete in the find of a lifetime. What do three men and one woman all have in common? They're all comic book villains. I'm Adam, and don't forget to bag and board your funny books because you're listening to a kind of garbage podcast, movie edition.
It's a kind of...
So today, Cody, we watched one of my favorite comic book movies, which is Comic Book Villains. This movie is about two comic book stores that find out from a third party that a comic book collector in town where they live, which I don't remember what city it is, had passed away, and he had never shopped at their stores, I guess, and he has a massive comic book collection. So the plot of the movie, according to IMDb, is that a guy dies after collecting comic books for decades. His mom inherits them, and she ain't selling. Owners of two comic book stores want the collection. Their scheming gets ever more desperate. So that's the summary. Cody, what happens in this movie?
It took a while to get started. It's kind of a neat spin. It starts off kind of being like a film noir robbery where like a bunch of kind of small town business owners get roped up into committing a crime, which is kind of it's a fun premise. Like you have kind of a down on his luck comic book store owner, and then you have another successful owner who and they both kind of see it as either the score of a lifetime to either retire on or, get their business back on their feet.
Yeah, which is funny because two comic book stores, one is owned by Norman, who is Michael Rappaport, and the other is Raymond, who is played by Donald Logue, which he is in so many TV shows and movies that I've watched and loved.
This movie literally could just it could literally just say comic book villains starring that guy from that movie, because there are so many that guy actors in this movie.
There is. Every single time a new character comes up, you're like, I know him. I have no idea what his name is. But yeah, the main grungy comic book owner, and then the clean Apple-ish store style comic book owner. I like the grungy comic book store more.
Interesting.
Way more.
I think as someone who buys comics, I thought it was kind of neat. Like the movie's older now. When did it come out? 2002? Yeah, it kind of predicted it literally looks identical to what a comic book store looks like now, where there's some comics, but there's so many trading cards and action figures on the wall. And you're like, this looks like every comic book store.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but there's one point in the movie, which is my favorite part, where Raymond's yelling at the one owner. He's like, you dabble, you sell fucking action figures and magic cards, which is hilarious. Even when in the opening of the movie and you're in Raymond's comic book store, there's action figures in there. There are toys. They are, I guess, comic book action figures. I don't know if that's how he justifies it, but his store is fucking amazing. It's really dark, though. That would be my only thing. It is super dark, and he's smoking inside of it. Michael
Rappaport's comic book store looks like it's a real comic book store that they had filmed in. Like it looks like they found a comic book store in some small town downtown, and everything looks in place. Like there's, some tables with long boxes on it, and then you have action figures, and then a whole counter with magic cards in it. And then at the beginning of the movie, when it shows Donald Logue's comic book store, it's it's very obviously like a set of a comic book store where it's too busy. Like there's too much going on. Yeah, it is. It's like the entire store is just amazing. New release racks with everything on it, and it's interesting because there's arcade cabinets in it, there's posters in it, there's it's lined with comics wall to ceiling, but all the comics are faced out so you can clearly see their titles, which is not like any comic book store.
One of the things I really liked about this too is whenever you see a fictional comic book style movie, not about superheroes, but ones that take place where they're selling comic books or comic books are in them, it's usually fictional characters, fictional books that they talk about. But in this one, they go all out. They're showing the Marvel, their
Yeah,
DC,
when
and there's some Image like
so with the
splattered
premise of the
around as
movie
well.
being them battling over who's going to end up holding on to this stash of first edition valuable comics, I had a gut feeling when we were watching it that when they find out that there's like a comic in the collection, they were going to find out it was going to be like, I'm trying to think of a name, like it was going to be like yeah, it was going to be like first appearance of
Like Bible Man or something.
Hypno Man or something, and they were going to be like Hypno Man #1. That's worth almost as much as Superman #1. But they actually, yeah, it's kind of neat to see because when it shows
Yeah.
kind of glimpses of what the legendary stash is comprised of, it's actually golden age. They're real comics. They looked up
It's
what are
real
valuable
comic.
comics, and it's all golden age action comics and tales of suspense and detective comics and
If you actually entered a room like that, you would
yeah,
jizz
they're
in your pants. You'd be like, "Look at these books." You're
yeah,
like, "Holy
it's
shit!"
literally it's almost I'm actually surprised that they dialed it back and they didn't make it that the room was just full of first appearance Superman, first appearance Batman, first appearance Spider-Man, because the books are literally just
Yeah.
weird historical. A lot of them are even like pre-war books, and it's interesting to see that they did the research to pick those titles.
Yeah. So the way the movie starts is Raymond is in his comic book store
Yeah,
and in walks one of his, I guess, best customers,
yeah, that
played
famous
by
that guy
Bad Boy
actor,
Danny
Danny
Masterson
Masterson.
from That 70s Show and also from
Yeah,
multiple rape
this is
accusations.
I guess this is back when he was still working. He comes in and he kind of starts dropping subtle hints around the comic book shop about, hey, I just heard through the grapevine that, this legendary comic book collector just passed away and no one's really claiming his collection, which kind of, jump starts the plot of, oh, wait a minute, there's something valuable out there. And then you find out that it's weird because he doesn't have any motivation. He just goes to another comic book shop and does the same thing. Like I was kind of, he has no,
But does he have
no,
motivation? I don't know. No. Well, there's
what was
it's
his
foreshadowing. There's
motivation?
motivation down the road.
Okay. Cause I don't think he does. I
Oh,
think,
but we'll get to
I
that
honestly think
eventually.
they forgot he was in the movie and then they wrote him a little epilogue at the end.
Is that the motivation though? Was it?
Yeah.
You never hear about what happens. We'll get there when we get there, but they don't talk about
Yeah. Which I
why he's
thought,
telling us. He almost seems just like a shit disturber.
like it was so blatant, like it almost like when he goes to the other store, it actually kind of cuts to him doing kind of like a bit of a smirk, like he knows he's leading these two different comic book shops on. And I thought there was going to be more of a payoff, like there was going to be, he was going to get the comic book shops to take possession of the comics, then he was going to steal them, or while the comic book shop owners were fighting over the comics, he was going to have like kind of he was going to be doing something in the background for his own game. There wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't really
Yeah.
satisfied with the reason why he did what he did. He kind of did it because they needed a reason for both comic book stores to find out about it, and they were just like, oh, a customer tells them, and it's the same customer.
He never explains how he even knows that this person
Oh,
had a
he's
collection.
dead comic book collector's mom mentions it to his mother in the doctor's office, and then his mother tells him that, yeah, I mean, it's a reason, like it gets the story going.
Yeah, and then after that, for some reason, we jump to a strip club, which even even watching it, like I guess it's a topless bar where you don't see any boobs because this is probably rated. No,
Yeah,
it'd
there
be
was,
rated R still because there's lots of swearing in it.
yeah, so
But
you meet
this is where you meet Carter.
the character Carter, played by Carrie Ells, which is another that guy from Princess Bride. He's introduced kind of as, and this
Yep.
kind of goes with the film. I really thought this was kind of going for like a really tongue-in-cheek film noir. Like it was going to be a movie about comics that was going to almost play out as if it was like a pulp comic, like a detective comic. So it introduces his character as kind of like this, thuggish guy who's hanging out at a strip club, whose girlfriend's a dancer. And I think like the scene that establishes him is he meets his girlfriend at work. And then when he goes to leave, he gets roughed up in the parking lot by his girlfriend girlfriend's ex-husband, and then he wins like a 5-on-1 fight to establish that he's like a tough badass.
Yeah, he stabs the guy. What he stabs him in the
Yeah,
stomach, and
yeah,
then steals their
it got
baseball bats
violent
and beats
quick.
the shit out of all of them.
It looks like he stabbed somebody in the eye, which is pretty scary.
I guess the one character we haven't talked about, I guess, is it even the protagonist? Would you say
Yeah,
DJ Quails?
yeah. So DJ Quails,
And
who
that's the
is
Archie
that
kid,
guy from any movie that requires kind of like a sheltered mama's boy or a nerd? Yeah, like he's
a goofy looking,
yeah. So he's in it, and
yeah, goofy
he's
looking
kind
nerd
of
kid.
Donald Logue's moral compass for the first bit of the movie, and then as Donald Logue and
Mhm.
Michael Rappaport try to get on the mother's good side to see if she'll sell the collection, DJ Quails actually like makes a connection with the mother, and she kind of reciprocates it. Like they kind of become friends by not talking about the comic book collection.
Yeah, which is a
Yeah,
nice change of pace
which
because
I mean,
everybody's after the
it's
comic book
something for him
collection.
to do, and it's something for the mother to do. One of my problems with the movie was they did a
Mhm.
pretty good job of setting up like giving motivation for why the comic book store owners need to buy this collection or steal this collection, and they're both kind of secretly desperate without the other one knowing it. They're both kind of like by the book guys that are now flirting with the idea of what if I just steal it? Like,
Yeah, and when you say that, they're both very by the book guys. Michael
yeah,
Rappaport's guy is so like no swearing, honey. It's like, and there's all these things where he's like very by the books, and his
I
wife
think
Judy,
Natasha Lyonne,
played
yeah,
by
that girl.
yeah Natasha Lyonne, which is that girl
She's
from
a
all those movies and
yeah,
TV shows that you watch.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
she's ruthless. Like she goes back to the old lady's house, being like, "Hey, woman to woman," trying to make that rapport with her, and
yeah.
kind of
So
succeeds, but
as
like
the
literally
movie
doesn't go anywhere
progresses,
whatsoever.
you kind of see she's very hesitant to even get involved, and then she kind of starts getting an
Yep.
idea of the potential of how much this could be worth and what this could do to their lives. And you kind of see
And how does she
she
get this
reads
idea?
an Overstreet Buyers guide.
Husband's like, "Baby, look how much
Yeah.
these comic
So
books
there's
are
a
worth.
nice scene of
$1,500.
Natasha
Read
Lyonne
this."
reading an Overstreet in bed, and then kind of like dreaming that comic books and money are falling and just covering the bed. And then she wakes her husband up and says, "I'm on board. Like, yeah, let's go ahead and do this." And it's her character on that side. It's her character that's ultimately kind of tempted to the dark side. Like it's her character really loses that, pure edge.
Yeah, for someone who basically has no interest in comic books, I don't even know why she works at the store.
Yeah.
She goes like full ham into
So
everything. The one scene when she gets back to the comic book store after trying to get the comic books from the old lady, it's one of my favorite lines. Where her husband's like, "How'd it go?" And she goes, I went all but going down on the old bitch." And this like mother and
yeah,
kid is like, "Oh," and they leave this
the
so
movie
disgusted.
establishes her character as kind of like a almost a homemaker, or she's someone who wants to have a kid because she wants to be a homemaker. But I think they kind of realize that like
Yeah.
Natasha Lyonne's kind of like at her best when she's kind of like like kind of being a little rough around the edges and swearing, and that's kind of like her charisma. So she changes from like the doting wife pretty quickly to we got to get these effing comic books.
And Michael Rappaport's character, he doesn't even like her. He even mentions like, "Oh, I thought like our marriage was gonna like we were gonna break up because we have no interest in each other and we have no interest in
Yeah,
the things that each of us like." I'm like,
that's kind
"Holy
of their
cow, buddy!"
character's motivation, is that she wants a kid and he wants, he kind of wants the business to be more successful than it is. So when they find out about this collection that's up for grabs, she sees it as this will finally be the money that we won't have to work so hard and we can kind of settle down and start a family, which is what she wants. And he kind of sees it. He sees it as this will be like such a huge boost to my store. Like we could sell everything overpriced and, we could make a killing off this and like, stretch it out for years selling these collector books. Where eventually Donald Logue's character says like his inspiration for the whole thing is he wants to be kind of, he sees this as kind of a foot in the door into the greater comic book community. So like his name will kind of be mentioned whenever people reference like classic comic books or collector books.
Yeah, he starts mentioning like big finds where people like found a massive stash somewhere, which I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there thinking is like it's somebody else's collection. Like I understand it too, but that's what he wants the recognition that he
Yeah.
found this massive trove of super rare comics. So when people go to San Diego Comic Con, they can be like, "Yo, man, do you have mystery? It's like Science Mysteries #4." It's like, no, but
Yeah, like
Raymond
he
does over
sees
there.
it
He's like, I
as
want to be that
not even a
guy.
way to he at one point he says he's willing to team up and he doesn't even want money. He just wants to be the guy to help broker the books, like the sale of the books, just to be involved. Like just he kind of wants to go up a level from being a failed comic book store owner.
Which is, it's such a touching moment too, because he's like, I
Yeah,
don't
like
want the money.
he
I just want
admits
to
to them
be
that
there. I
like
know that I
his
can't
store's
compete with
going
you
under. He
guys.
can't afford to do any of the building maintenance. He can't afford to do hardly any of these things. He's only there just because of the love he has for comic books. And he just, yeah, like I said, he just wants to be a part of the culture. He doesn't even care if he profits off it.
And I love the way Raymond's character looks throughout the entire movie. He has a super greasy
Uh,
mullet. He has a button-up
the entire
Hawaiian
movie
shirt.
is him with
There's
the
a scene where
filthiest
you're
hair and just wearing the
sorry.
filthiest clothes. That's actually one thing I didn't really
The
like about the
thing.
movie is, well, there's a few things I really didn't like about the movie, but one of them is they really drill home like the Raymond McGillicuddy character is just like a complete bum.
Oh, 100%. Okay, here's
Yes.
my question about him. He needs money to fix the roof. He's talking about the comic book store's roof. And as
Oh
Archie's
my
over, it's
God.
just Raymond
Yeah,
walking around literally in his
he's in like the
disgustingly
most
stained tight
stained pair of
whities.
underpants, which if anyone out there wants to know a vague sense of the general shape of Donald Logue's genitals, this is the movie. Like it really didn't need to it's rough.
See, and it's not even like there are shit stains on the back of his underwear. They look like a pair of underwear that you would find run over on the side of the road that were all like gray and brown from being ran over by dirt, and you could pick it up and it was like a frisbee. But then he likes like
Yeah, it they look disgusting and they don't leave much to the viewer's imagination.
yeah, not whatsoever. So after Raymond tries to talk with them about not even splitting it, just like being there to help him, Michael Rappaport's
Yeah.
character is super nice about it, like wants to listen to him, but Natasha Lyonne, like super rude, which makes Raymond lose his mind, smashes one of their gnomes in their walkway,
This is
and says like, "Your wife's an
Yeah,
animal."
like this is the point in the movie where Michael Rappaport and Natasha Lyonne, their characters truly like separate when he's confronted with, do you want to work on this together? He actually thinks about it being like, you know what, like we could probably get more
Yeah.
done together. And when his wife overhears it, all she kind of thinks is this is just another person getting involved that's going to want to cut. So he kind of is starting to warm up to the idea, and she quickly starts shooting down the idea, being like, we don't need you. You don't bring anything to the table. Going back to the
Yep.
roof scene where they're discussing that eventually does pay off and there is a rainstorm.
Yep.
And it's kind of like
Oh
establishing
my
that
God, is there ever?
the Raymond McGillicuddy, he's like truly hit rock bottom. Like he's throwing garbage bags over his store's inventory just to try to keep it dry, and he's running around with buckets trying to stop water from pooling up. But all I could think of during that scene, which is kind of like a very heavy-handed, like it's literally like he can't even keep water out of his business. All I could think of was how accurate it was when we went to a comic book store one time. We've actually been to two comic book stores where we walked
Mm-hmm.
in and they had cardboard or plastic over all their inventory because they had water leaks and they didn't close. They just stayed open, being like, come on in and buy some soggy comics. Yeah, we went in one time and there was literally
Yep.
like a pipe just leaking onto
Yeah.
comic book, like up boxes of hundreds of comic books, and the guy was just like, "Oh yeah, don't touch that stuff. It's wet." It's like sir, it's paper.
The other one
Yeah,
was the store that they were renovating, but I think they had a pipe burst as well. And that was the store that you wanted to look at a box of Frank Cho books. The guy's like, "Oh, those aren't for sale. They haven't been stored." You're like, "Okay." It's like they said to you, "It's
yeah,
like,
that
well, do
was
you want to look at them?" You're like, "No, no, it's fine." I won't touch them.
No, I don't. Yeah,
And then
we went
I don't
back
think we bought
once, I
anything
know,
from them.
and the box was in the exact still like we went back a year later and the
And the
box
box
was
was
in the same
still there.
spot with like just
Yeah.
a layer of dust over it. I think the most realistic part of this movie is that it's a movie about a failing comic book store, which is should be the description of every comic
Which
book
is
store in
100%
any
fair.
movie. Oh, we sell comics, and we're we're a day away from bankruptcy.
So, literally, almost in the exact middle of the movie is a montage of
Yeah.
everyone helping out. What's the lady's name? Miss Cresswell. Everyone helping her out, doing chores for her, and then eventually Archie befriends her, like we talked about. Judy, Michael Rappaport's wife, Natasha, runs over
Yeah, this
Raymond
was
with her
this was
car
something
and
else I
breaks his
really didn't
arm.
like was it's the movie did a pretty good job setting up. So the movie opens up kind of with like an audio clip towards the end of the movie of a gun going off. So you know that by the end of the movie things will get violent. And the movie starts by introducing all these characters that are
Yep.
likable, good people. Now it's just a case of how long is it going to take for these people to start getting, violent and turn on each other. And I was interested in that. But yeah, by the time they start going to Miss
Mhm.
Cresswell's house, the movie literally just turns into like a cartoon of one person goes to the house to help, but then the other person's secretly trying to sabotage them. I don't know. I kind of thought it was out of place.
Yeah, it definitely didn't feel like it should have been there. The whole like running him over and just
Yeah,
sabotaging their good deeds to Mrs. Cresswell. It was
yeah, it was
cartoony.
almost like it was like it's done for comedic effect, but it almost got like too slapstick. Michael Rappaport goes, "Oh,
Mhm.
I'll help you install this new electrical outlet. Like that's no problem. I can help you do that." And then as he's doing some electrical work on the house, you kind of see a hand come into frame and then switch on the breaker that he has turned off. And then off screen, you hear like the cartoon sound effect of someone getting electrocuted.
Yeah. So eventually, Michael Rappaport and Natasha Leon decide that. Well, sorry, she
Yeah.
decides that they should go to a pawn shop to buy a pistol to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and then that's where you see another, hey, that guy as the shop owner, which is Marshall Belp, or as I
Yeah.
know him, Quato
Yeah.
from Total Recall. I don't know if you thought that right away. You're like, oh my
Great.
god, it's Quato.
Yeah, he's a great guy when he shows up in movies. Like that's all I can think of.
Yeah.
He shows up just for the one scene, just to sell Natasha Leona a pistol, which kind of
Mm-hmm.
shows how serious things are getting and how desperate they're getting for these comics. As that's going on, we cut over to Donald Logue's character Raymond, who goes through a high school yearbook and kind of drags his finger over and finds Carrie L's character, whose name is Carter, who's kind of established as he was like the bad boy in high school who, fought everyone and, was a real bad apple. So he ends up
He's a
tracking
big
him down
bully.
to that strip club. And he basically explains his plan of like, look, I can't rob this old lady, but you're a bad guy. Like, what if you rob her and then I split some of the money with you, which gets him interested in the case now.
Yeah, and even in that yearbook, like Raymond's picture is fucking atrocious. It's almost like they got asked everyone on the cast, like, hey, will you please bring in your yearbook picture and we'll put you in there.
The yearbook he drags out, like the yearbook photos look like they're from the 50s or the 60s. Like the pictures like do not line up with anything.
No, and then their
Yeah.
two pictures, their characters' pictures are
Yeah.
obviously much more exaggerated, where the other people's pictures look normal, but theirs not so much. Yeah, you don't even figure out, like,
Yeah.
how does he know where to find him? He just opens up the yearbook. Where's that fucking bully? There he is. Puts his
Yeah,
finger on him,
which
then snap. You're at the strip club next
so
moment.
he now is roped in kind of a bad guy to do the heavy lifting for him, where Natasha Leone is kind of like, we can do this ourselves. So this all kind of comes to a head now with both groups going to Miss Cresswell's house to basically get the comics for themselves. Raymond and Archie driving to Mrs. Cresswell's house and kind of running into Carter, who's already in the middle of performing the robbery. So they have a change of heart, and they basically they're now trying to persuade Carter to just leave the comics, leave Miss Cresswell alone, and they don't want to go through it anymore. But Carter now knows that these comics are worth a ton of money, and he's willing to do everything himself, and he's not leaving without those comics.
Yeah, and then that's when Michael Rappaport and Natasha Lyonne also just storm into the house. They don't even knock, so they just, and then she whips out her gun.
Turns into a Mexican standoff of Donald pointing, or Raymond McGillicuddy pointing his gun at Carter, saying, "Leave the comics," and then Carter pointing his gun at Raymond, saying, "I'm not leaving without the comics." And then you have Natasha Lyonne's character kind of waving a gun around at both of them, being like, "No, if anyone gets the comics, it's us." And Archie is now trying to calm down Mrs. Cresswell, who's freaking out that all these robbers are in her home.
And he's untying her. And then that's where Carter slowly starts to slide a knife from the inside of his jacket arm down to his hand. So he has a throwing knife, and he proceeds to huck it at Miss Cresswell's stomach, killing her in the end. But
Carter murders the old woman.
Natasha shoots her husband.
Yeah, so he's still okay. He's still moving around.
It like grazes his arm.
Carter grabs the comics, puts them in his truck, and then takes off, leaving Archie, who stays behind with Mrs. Cresswell, yelling for someone to call 911. Michael Rappaport and Natasha Lyonne's character go back to their car and try to figure out where Carter's going. Raymond, up to this point, has pretty much been a good guy. You see him finally make the turn where he has the chance to help save Mrs. Cresswell, and instead he bails out and goes after Carter in the comics. And then Raymond visits Carter's stripper girlfriend, and then and then threatens to beat her legs with a hammer.
And he's so fucking creepy, as he's he's have a knife at one point, and he's running it on her legs, lifting up her nightie just a little bit, but you're just oh,
they really go out of their way to show
now I just hate you so much.
How far he's fallen. So he's, threatening a woman with a hammer to give up the location. Later on, it's implied that he roughs her up. So then we cut to Michael Rappaport, Natasha Lyonne are now at Raymond McGillicuddy's comic book store, seeing if that's where they've met up after the robbery. He's hurt bad.
Is about to pass out from the loss of blood.
They're kind of ransacking the store looking for the comics. And in doing so, he knocks a counter or a table over on his leg, which pins him to the floor.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the movie, Danny Masterson's character goes to lean onto it, and Raymond tells him to watch it.
Yeah. So that's
broken, and he has 3 phone books under it. And then
Michael Rappaport's
knocks
trapped,
the phone books out, and then the counter falls.
And a cigarette he's smoking ends up falling onto a bin of comics, lighting them on fire. So we now have Natasha Lyonne able-bodied to get out. She's not injured, but you have Michael Rappaport, who's been shot, and now he's saying his foot's broken. He's trapped in the store, and now the store is kind of being swallowed by flames, where she kind of finishes her turn. And not only does she decide to abandon him in the burning store, she shoots him.
The only thing I can think of is that she's going to use, I had to put him out of his misery because he was on fire. And
she tries to move it, but...
Yeah, and then as she's I need to go find a phone because it's 2002. Nobody has a cell phone at this point. Yeah, she's I have to go find a payphone, and she leaves, and she just stops. He's like, please. And she just slowly turns around, pulls out her gun, and pops him.
She just wants out now. Not only does she want out of the robbery, she wants out of her marriage and everything. She's just done. So we cut to Carter's hideout. Raymond McGillicuddy's figured out where he's hiding, and Raymond goes to confront him at the house. Which leads to a pretty ridiculous fight scene of Raymond using a nail gun to shoot nails at Carter, while Carter uses a real gun to shoot bullets at Raymond.
Looking through holes in the wall to be where is he? There he is, and sticking it and shooting him. Hits him once just in the leg. And then Carter starts speeding away with the boxes of comics in the back of his truck. And then Raymond jumps in.
Carter's trying to escape and kind of kick him out of the truck, which ends with Raymond jumping clear of the vehicle, and then Carter paying attention, like looking forward and noticing where he's actually driving. And he's driving towards like a farmer's pond.
And does like the biggest uh-oh face instead of just hitting your
Oh
brake. You're
yeah,
like,
he
oh no, all the comics go
all
into
these
the water.
comics start like they start like getting blown out of the boxes, and now they're all floating along the surface of the pond.
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention is that Carter was a comic book collector when he was a kid, but he doesn't collect them anymore as an adult. But
Yeah,
apparently, like he was a hardcore collector where he knew all the information of the comic books, which plays into when
yeah.
he
So
comes out of the water and
pretty badly injured, and he's climbing out of the water, and Raymond's so distraught over basically like the score's ruined, and all the comics have been destroyed. Raymond kind of questions if Carter ever liked comics and starts giving him like a bit of a test on how much knowledge he has on comics, which Raymond doesn't think he passes. So
mhm.
Raymond shoots him to death.
and
Yeah.
it's a rage kill where he unloads the entire guy. And that's
Yeah.
even after kicking Carter like in the throat. You hear the crunch, and then him talking like an older man, which
Yeah.
was the beginning of the movie, which even I forgot. Like who is the old person in the beginning? And it was Carter, which
While that's going on,
is a little twist.
Archie's with the dying Mrs. Cresswell, who basically their like storyline together is that her son wasted his life collecting comics, and she doesn't want to see Archie waste his life, and she doesn't want to give the comics to anyone because it's the only thing she has left of her son. So Archie says he doesn't even care about the comics, and he just wants to make sure she's okay. So with her dying breath, she informs Archie that her son also has other collectibles hidden in the house, which you find out are like collectible, what they're like antique baseball cards and memorabilia.
Yeah, it's just I think 2002 era, like that's when baseball collectibles were still big, like cards. Because realistically, I think baseball and hockey cards, that boom was like the mid 90s, kind of just like comics. But you don't see lots of people being like, oh man, I just need a Michael Jordan rookie card. Like that era, I think is
Well,
done.
that's what
But
I,
back in when this movie was made, like those cards are probably still worth a lot of money. And that's yeah,
yeah, that's something I kind of
he
thought
grabs
was
baseball
weird
cards,
was the
signed
movie
baseballs.
establishes that these comic books are worth thousands of dollars. And they've done enough research to actually find out the names of like valuable comics. And then they've made props of the covers of like these valuable comics to like throw around. But then by the end of the movie, they have to think of something that like everyone is in agreement is worth more than comics. Like instead of
Yeah,
saying
thank God
to
it wasn't Beanie
the Archie
Babies.
character, like, oh, he had even more comics here, you can have those. She goes, hey, you ever hear of Babe Ruth? Because my son has a Babe Ruth baseball card. And it's like, yeah, I get it. It's worth a lot of money. Like, so are these old comics. Like you've already established that something's worth money. Why are you jumping ship now to like, oh, he also collects something else, which
Yeah,
I
even
don't know.
with that, like the comic books in reality went up in value, where baseball cards, I don't know because I'm not a collector for those, but they're not as desirable as pop culture comic books now.
I think you know what I don't know. Like obviously, I think that there's always going to be like a holy grail of baseball cards, which I'm sure is like a Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays or Babe Ruth, where there's some baseball card that everyone like all you have to do is say it and everyone goes, yeah,
It's like
that yeah, I bet that's worth a fortune. Or no one has one of those. You could have done that, like just stay like the movie's called Comic Book Villains. Like you've pretty much established the movie's about comics, and then by the end of it, you change the robbery to something else.
well, he didn't rob them.
No, but like
Yeah,
the score gets destroyed, and then the
it
valuable
flips over
item,
to baseball cards. Yeah,
yeah, it just changes over to something completely different. Which I thought it would have been like, I thought it would have been neat if like she said, my son gave me a comic to try to like show me why he was interested in them. And then like he goes up to get the comic out of her room and it ends up being like Action Comics #1. And he's like, oh, wow, like this is the most expensive one. But it's like,
even
yeah,
with the comic books that her son had, Sorry, they're not bagged
No.
or boarded. The condition is like it's okay, but even they're like, oh, like you should have seen these comic books. They're beautiful. It's like no, they look like shit. Like they look weathered as well.
Yeah, like they were clearly props made with pictures they've scanned of like
With like
reprints of
5.0 comics.
which it's fine. Like they actually didn't really show the comics that much. Like it's in a
No,
few, it like kind of glances over a few of them on top of boxes. So yeah, so after Archie, kind of gets his reward for staying good by the end of the movie, Raymond McGillicuddy goes to Natasha Lyonne's comic book store
do you
where
remember what
she's,
that store is called?
what was it called?
It's called Comics and Fun. Just the worst name possible. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, well, he meets her there where she's kind of like drowning her sorrows in booze. Now the film kind of really starts cutting back to like it's like hard boiled, pulpy crime story where like they kind of treat the comic book store as like a bar where he walks in and he's like, why the long face? Like, what are you drinking to forget about? And then she kind of starts talking like the mysterious
Like
like femme fatale character who's like, oh, I
she's
had
the
to,
dame.
yeah, like, yeah, exactly. Like, and it's kind of clever and it's, I don't know, kind of crummy that they didn't do the full movie like that because I thought it would have been more interesting. So he kind of connects with her as like, this mysterious guy who's got nothing left to lose and she's like the damaged femme fatale character.
I
And then
literally
the
thought that they were gonna have sex on the comic book table at one point, like on the
yeah, like
cash register.
yeah, like they totally play it up like there's like tension between them and everything. And I thought it was one of the better parts of the movie. The police show up and then Raymond's just kind of like, that's my ride. And then he leaves her and walks out, commits suicide by cop.
Pulls his gun out, kind of waves it at them. There's like, yeah, and she
Yeah,
does not bat an eye. She just sits there drinking her, I assume it's vodka, but yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it's one of the better scenes. Like it, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. So then the movie has now we cut to Raymond's funeral where Archie's there with a few of the other characters. And
all look
then
like dirtbags. Every single one of them,
oh yeah.
except for Conan. He doesn't look like a dirtbag.
Yeah, so Danny Masterson's there and then that's where we find out that he's taken over Raymond's store and then
Mm-hmm.
Natasha Lyonne's gone to jail for murder. It kind of pans past some of the characters to give them a bit of an epilogue of like what happened to them after the story. And they're all dressed like dirtbags, with the exception of him. And then it shows like standing in the background a groundskeeper for the cemetery standing like off to the side of them who's wearing like comical coveralls and he like literally has a shot like he's holding a shovel at a funeral and he's got like a stupid haircut and a goofy hat. You can tell that like they probably had an idea to like film a joke with him being like to make some joke about the friend and then bury him or some joke about Raymond and then start burying him because there's too much going on with his costume for him not to be referenced. They completely ignore him. We go to Archie's epilogue, which is he ends up going to Europe because now he agrees with Mrs. Cresswell that like comics are terrible and he's wasted his life and he needs to like go out and explore. It kind of shows him meeting a woman in Spain.
And
I
then it's
don't,
over.
it's
I
over.
hate the
Yeah.
Archie character so much. I think his character was the worst one in the movie.
Well, he like dips in and out of it. Like it starts off as if he's going to be the narrator. Yeah, like it opens with him narrating, and then the movie just gets rid of the narrator, and then Raymond becomes the main character, and Carter, who's introduced at the start of the movie, is completely forgotten until the very end, and they
Mm-hmm.
need someone for Raymond to fight. Like
They
the movie,
established that Carter was the badass, and they ignored him for 40 minutes.
yeah, and then yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so
It wasn't
there's
a
probably like
bad movie. Yeah, it
there's probably
was. It
like 7
wasn't
or 8
bad.
characters in it, but yeah, I enjoy it.
It was produced by like all of the main characters.
They all put their own money into it.
Yeah, I guess they helped get it made. Like DJ Quayles, who played Archie, is one of the producers. Donald, the guy who played Raymond, is a producer. The guy who played Carter is a producer. I mean, it's
Is
interesting,
Michael
I guess.
Rappaport a producer as well?
Did not produce.
Did not contribute. Yeah, so for me, I really like this movie, which is why I made Cody watch it. And he's just like, God damn it, Adam, that's 90 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back.
You know what? It started off interesting. It ended kind of interesting. It's just it really didn't need the scene in the middle of them like getting into hijinks, like fixing the house.
I think that was padding because even after the credits, I think it was 1 hour, 33 minutes. So the actual movie does not break 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would have been more interesting if it establishes, like the first act establishes there's a collection of valuable comics that are basically just sitting in a room that, no one has ownership of them right now, like just some old lady who doesn't even know what they are. And then it would have been better if the second act was the robbery, which maybe all three of them work together. Like Raymond knows about the comics and how to sell them. Michael Rappaport and Natasha Lyonne's characters know about it, and they demand that they be involved. And then they drag in the Carter character as like the guy with experience committing crime, and then have the third act kind of be like them all turning on each other and like the comics changing hands and everyone's trying to backstab the other person.
Would you recommend this movie to people who ask you about it?
I don't know. I like maybe like if they're really interested in comics, yeah, there's some neat comic things in it you get a kick out of. If you're looking for like a competent movie or like an interesting heist movie, I think it kind of fails on that, which sucks because it has potential.
Yeah, it's so close to being, I don't want to say a good movie, but it's so close to being even more enjoyable because the way the movie looks is great. Like it looks like a real
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, it does. They did a good job. Obviously to score a movie is very expensive, and to provide a soundtrack and get the licensing rights for music is very expensive. And that's kind of another weak spot of the movie is some of the music that plays in the background. Pretty rough. um,
I don't remember any of the music. I wasn't even
it's
listening for
it's
it.
yeah, it's pretty forgettable music and some of it is like kind of almost comical, the music, like how
Yeah.
it's played up. So yeah, the soundtrack wasn't great. I think the most frustrating part is they've set up all the players in the movie. Like all the characters kind of fill a role for a heist movie, and you establish that all the characters are going in with good intentions, but greed is starting to like seduce them. It's an interesting premise. It's just also it sets up that for moments in the movie it kind of switches to like almost being like a play on a like an old detective movie, and
Yeah.
it doesn't pay off. Like there's a few scenes that do it and it's interesting, but then there's scenes where like Donald Logue is running around in dirty underpants, and they're doing like home alone tricks to each other in an old lady's house to try to like scare the other person away. That was kind of frustrating. Like they were so close to like following through on one idea, and then they just kind of got nervous and jumped around a few times.
Yeah. Well, this movie was written and directed by the same screenwriter for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I've never
No.
seen and I do not want to. Any final thoughts for the movie?
It's a frustrating movie. It's an interesting concept and it has some fun things, but if you're expecting it to kind of like be a fun heist movie, it's not.
For me,
Which
I don't even remember where I bought this on DVD. I don't know when I bought it. I don't know where I bought it. I don't know how much it cost. All I know is I bought it because of the title, and I looked at the cover and I was like, I know some of these people.
I think that's kind of one of the funny things about the movie is it's literally littered with that guy from that movie. Like
Yeah.
almost everyone you'll recognize as, yes, somebody who played like a minor character in a major movie.
So that brings us to the rankings. We've only watched one other movie, so I'll let you go first.
Oh man, really? I'll say I'll put this as number two. I thought Jaws 3D was better than this.
No, it's fine. For my ranking, I'm going the opposite way. I enjoyed comic book villains a little bit more than Jaws 3. Not by much.
Yeah,
I was never a big Jaws fan, so like this is for if somebody asked me which one would you rather watch, I just watch comic book villains, but I do enjoy it and I like the subject. So it beats it just by a smidgen. which means my number one movie right now is comic book villains.
And mine somehow is Jaws 3. Jaws 3 is like an absolute disaster of a movie. Like it's a train wreck, but I'll give it the credit that it goes, we're not going to be a good shark movie and it's not going to be a good disaster movie. So let's just try focusing on like those two paths. Like let's just take a little from column A and a little from column B and see if we can patch something together.
Yeah.
Whereas comic book villains, I find, jumped around a little too much in a little too many genres, and that's kind of what killed it for me. Was sometimes it was doing a play on like film noir, which was interesting, and then sometimes it kind of got slapstick, which was ridiculous, and then sometimes it just kind of got silly like it just got too goofy for no reason. All right. Okay. So that was comic book villains. Next time on the A Kind of Garbage podcast movie edition, we watch 4 Baldwin Brothers movies. Dead Weekend with Stephen Baldwin, Bodily Harm with Daniel Baldwin, The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, and Fair Game with William Baldwin. In no particular order. It's finally here, the 94-95 Baldwin Brother movie marathon that nobody asked for.
Thanks for joining us today for Comic Book Villains. We hope you enjoyed it and aren't tempted to rob any old ladies of their funny books.
And I'm Cody, still out there looking for the ultimate score, a full long box full of nothing but ravaged 2099s. Thanks for listening.
Just a reminder that you can find us online through our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram, both at A Kind of Garbage. You can also email us at akindofgarbage@gmail.com with any comments or questions. Be sure to also check out us at akindofgarbage.com as well as our Patreon page at patreon.com/akindofgarbage, where you can get access to our Discord channel and Patreon exclusive podcasts. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time.
So the first episode that came out, I'm going to say last week, where the quality was somewhat suspect on it, is from me recording it on my laptop, but using my computer, my desktop computer, to speak to you. So yeah, the quality probably wasn't that good for some people. They probably noticed that this one sounds a lot better.
Yeah, we kind of had to sort out some issues. Hopefully I sound a bit better. I know we had some technical issues finding a headset and microphone that would be compatible with my computer. For some reason, we had an issue with my one.
Yeah, well, the good thing now is both of us are using the exact same headset microphone, which means in theory we should sound the same. Whether we do, that will be for the podcast gods to decide.
Yeah. Thank God we got all the issues sorted out just in time for comic book villains.
Yeah, so speaking of comic books, I'm still waiting for an eBay purchase of that the Unnatural #1.
Okay.
With the Milo cover. I've still not gotten it. It's been probably like half a month. It's coming from Vancouver, but I got a tracking number, and it's sitting somewhere in Mississauga right now, waiting for them to ship it here.
Oh, cool. I just got in the mail. What did I get? I got 2 new Tula Lote art books, which I was pretty excited to get. They were kind of like a limited thing. I think she still got a few on her big cartel site. But I know they sell out pretty quickly, so I was pretty happy to get those, and they finally came in the mail.
Yeah, mail has been sluggish right now, so I'm happy you got them because those came from Europe, right?
Yeah, those came from the UK, and anytime I check, it took I think it took almost 2 months to come. But they basically, anytime I checked the tracking number, it just said like expect delays and there's going to be some inconsistencies because of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I wasn't too worried. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer than that, but I'm happy with it.
Yeah, with everything that's going on, I doubt that anything is going to go back to normal anytime soon.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like as of this recording, they're slowly talking about, in Canada at least, they're slowly talking about testing the waters with opening some non-essential businesses.
Yeah.
I know in the States right now, there some places are kind of demanding that they just open everything right now. So I don't know, like hopefully nothing bad comes of it.